So, David.
So, Stan.
This afternoon, I was working from home.
As we do.
I regained access to my Twitch account.
Oh.
I decided to tune in to friend of the show, Doomwake.
That's me.
Since he was streaming some Modern Horizons. And then at 3 o'clock, some joker in chat was like, "Hey, Doom, you gonna play in the challenge? You gonna play in the Modern challenge?" And Devon's like, "Yeah, sure, okay." And at 3 o'clock, which is 4 o'clock Doom time, he's firing up the challenge. I'm like, Devon, we have a podcast to record in like 5 hours.
Look, here.
What if you run deep?
I knew I was going to O2 drop anyway, so I thought it would be fine, okay? And conveniently, I did O2 drop.
Is that what ended up happening?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Look, even if I was
What were you
6-0, if I was 6-0, I could have just dropped and just got the prizes from top 8. It would have been fine.
Or we could have done the wildest episode we've ever had where we like co-stream your league without visuals as a podcast where we just like talk about what's going on.
That would have been pretty good content.
That would have been the best possible outcome.
What did you play, Devon?
I played this like weird blue-black affinity deck. It's not quite the one that we had talked about earlier, but I'm just trying like some different Kappa Cannoneer shells. That card's way too good for it to not see play, but it needs a little bit of
Love it. You're a man on a mission right now. You and Kappa Cannoneer.
Oh yeah.
I do think it's pretty impressive that you can just like, I think, what is it, 300 play points or 600 to join a challenge? Like
3.
It's nothing. How often, when was the last time you had to put money into your Moto account?
Like 6 years ago.
And just coasting? Like,
Yeah.
I have not put money in it either, but like,
Oh my God.
I don't
quiet.
have enough loose change to fire up a challenge. I'm always like one bad league away from having to like sell some chests or whatever.
No, you open the chests.
Oh, is that the
No,
secret?
seriously, because you get play points from the chests.
Right.
But isn't it better to just sell the chest for ticks?
No, because I mean,
Just for ticks.
like if you end up opening enough chests where you open like a card you can sell for 10 or 15 tickets, or multiple cards you can sell for 10 tickets, then it kind of like, I don't know, I think it balances out. Like the play points are, if you're gonna keep playing, the play points are what matters.
So you're saying I should stop selling my chests?
Always open.
Oh boy.
Wow, news you can use. Shane's gonna flip out. Also, I just put money into Moto about 3 months ago, so I don't even want to talk with all of this. This,
You want to know the last time I put money into Moto? 2020.
Okay.
I think right around MH2.
I do think it's about once a year for me, for what it's worth, that I put
that's
some
good.
in.
That's
but I'm sure Ryan Spain, friend of the show, wouldn't be happy to hear that exact point. But you know what? The money we pay to mana traders goes somewhere, doesn't it?
Hey, I think Spain respects the going optimal approach that we've leveraged to grind out Moto and make it an entertaining platform for the losers whose dreams we crush.
Like me. Like me.
Hello and welcome to episode 281 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, and with me on the line from the newer England, it's Devon O'Donnell, aka Doomwake. Hey, Doomwake.
What's newer about it?
It was founded by pilgrims and
Well,
the
No, I know that, but like it's New
15th
England.
century?
What's newer than previous New England?
well, it's just newer than old Britannia, England.
Oh, I see. Okay. I thought you meant like New England has changed within like since the last time I was on the show.
They're not good bits, but they're certainly attempts at bits nonetheless.
Stan, this is one of your lower. I'm gonna give you a pass on this one since you're raising an extra child right now.
Just
He's got a lot
put
on
some
his plate,
auto-tune
you know?
on it.
Guy does. When I logged into the recording studio here, Stan was standing in front of a camera with a baby in a baby holder, and then the baby spoke. Yeah,
Yeah, the Ergo Baby.
yeah.
Ergo Baby, sponsor the podcast.
It's a fine
so it's
accessory.
Also with us, the Godfather, Dave Harbarger.
Now-
Dave, did you have an Ergo baby?
We did not. We did like the sling. What was the sling thing? You know what I'm talking about? The baby Bjorn? We were a baby Bjorn family.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we also did the fabric swing. When the kids didn't like the Bjorn, we just like strapped them to us with fabric.
Wow. Yeah, mine's a bit more tactical.
Yeah. Yours looks a little bit like, yeah, it might have some like ballistic netting on it or something like that.
It literally does. It has a pocket that you could fit like an unsleeved 60 card deck into as well.
Ooh.
Perfect.
I use it for diapers and formula and other essentials.
Would a heavy play max, heavy play equip mag box fit in there, do you think?
The 80 might.
The 80.
It might.
Well, as we all know, Heavy Play is a card game and accessories brand that'll improve your gameplay and your game day. And we just want to say thank you so much for supporting Heavy Play while you've been listening to the podcast. And enough that Randy and the team have recently re-upped to continue sponsoring the Dive Down. So, by the way, this is the Godfather, Dave Harbarger, coming at you live from west suburbs of Chicago, because Stan did not introduce me.
I think I did, but
Nope.
I heard him.
That's okay.
the jury will confirm this later.
I always mess that up. All right, but anyway, Heavy Plays. Playmats, deck boxes, and card sleeves feature enhanced ergonomics, mobility, and protection. And their unique Equip Mag system allows you to magnetically attach dice, bundle decks, and carry your playmat, carry all your gaming gear in a single hand. They're all great. You get the mats, you get the boxes, you get the sleeves, all those things. Coming soon. Go check out at your LGS. Actually, it's at your LGS. Pretty sure it is. Or shop now at heavyplay.com. Use code the Dive Down 2024 for 10% off your first order. Heavyplay.com.
On this week's show, we've got a grab bag. We're breaking down tournament results. Nerd Rage Gaming had a Modern Open in St. Louis.
Yep. And MXP or Laughing Dragon had an event in, where was that? Tacoma, Washington, that we also will talk about a little bit in here. Another series that's going on.
Yeah. We're also going to try to guesstimate the PT to the best of our ability as we hype ourselves up. We'll do a little bit of a PT preview for Pro Tour Amsterdam, which is happening the weekend that this episode comes out. I guess Dave is also looking at Assassin's Creed spoilers, which makes sense because he has played every hour of every game of the Assassin's Creed franchise.
Can you take me higher?
And then Devon and we also played some decks this week, and we're going to talk about those. I played some Bant Nadu. Devon, were you on Prowess and Affinity?
Well, I'm mostly Affinity, but me and Dave and I were discussing some Prowess, so we might have some time to talk about that too.
Yeah. We are going to put Assassin's Creed last and maybe cover that another week because there's more to talk about here, but we'll see if we have time.
If you think Assassin's Creed is irrelevant this week, it's only going to be less relevant in weeks to come.
Depends on if we have less notes after the Pro Tour and need an easy episode, my friend.
That's
then we
true.
can go back.
Something
Shane's
tells me
not here, and somehow he still wrote 3-4 pages of notes.
I know, wild. Something tells me we'll have enough to talk about for with the Pro Tour next week.
Yeah. I was thinking the one after that when we really want to call it in.
Okay,
Phone it in.
I see.
Before we start phoning anything in, we got to go through housekeeping because we do have a new patron in the Dive Down Nation. Shout out this week goes to Charlie Dubs. It just says Charlie W in the notes, but I'm going to make it cool.
C-Dubs. I spent a lot of time watching the CW. I'm not going to lie. Watched a lot of Vampire Diaries, right? That was on the CW. The look on Stan's face is unbelievable right now.
I have no idea.
Devin, you're better off not knowing.
Elena.
No comment.
I was a Buffy nerd, but after
Yeah.
it had come to DVDs, so
Sure.
I never really watched it prime time.
You know.
If you'd like to support the show, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/thedivedown. You can also support us through our merch store at thedivedown.com/store. You can also support us while renting Magic Online cards with Mana Traders. This show would not be possible without Mana Traders, and you can play with brand new MH3 cards with our personal favorite Magic Online rental service. The promo code is in the show notes, but this month it is the Dive Down _43A. get 10% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. And that's going to be it for housekeeping, folks.
That's right. All right. We got a jam-packed show. We don't want this thing to be 2 hours to really flip Shane out while he's off having fun on a prior engagement tonight when he's editing. So let's get into this. Here's what I'm going to do. We're going to talk about the metagames and the top 8s of NRG St. Louis and the MXP Tacoma tournaments. Then Shane was nice enough to put together a table that crosses the number of players for a number of decks with their average match win points, which is pretty interesting to see as a way to kind of measure a little bit of performance. It's not the most precise way to do it, but it is something that is achievable with a couple of well-placed pivot tables. And I think what we'll do is use this discussion to try to talk about what we think the tiers will be at Pro Tour Amsterdam this weekend. So I might go through these tournaments quickly. Stop me if you have questions. Let's start with Energy St. Louis. So Energy St. Louis was around, how many players was this tournament? It was
160-ish?
160-ish. 167. Okay. Pretty big tournaments. We actually went through this one and tried to clean up the deck list names as much as we could. We did not have time to do that on the MXP tournament, but well known that people on Energy like to have a fun time with the deck names. And so we tried to head some of that off of the pass. I think people on Tacoma take things a little bit more seriously, if you know what I'm saying.
David is getting redder and redder. I think I see smoke coming out of his ears, looking at some of these silly goo goo gaga names of decks. Colorless Burn. What is that?
Okay.
Yeah, Colorless Burn.
I have something for Colorless Burn. So I was told by one of the commentators over the weekend that whenever a player hands in a paper deck list, because normally they submit them online through Melee, whenever a player hands in a paper deck list, the judges default it to Colorless Burn. Because that's
that makes a lot more sense.
It's like the most out there deck name, so it's like very obvious that that's not a real deck, you know?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shane said that there were so many of those when he was going through the data that there must be something going on, whether it was an error in the site or if it was that. What you just gave makes perfect sense as an explanation.
Of course, the real culprit is the judges.
Well, yeah, then it's the judge's fault, so.
Yeah, exactly. Like they got time to do all this other stuff. I will say now I'm going to feel bad about when we talk about what an amazing meta share that Colorless Burn had in the MXP tournament. But we'll get to that in a second. I'm just going to remove it from my leaderboard for the Pro Tour.
All right.
So let's just talk about the raw meta. I'm going to go through it in brackets like we kind of like to do here. 2 decks atop the top of the meta here by our counts. And that would be Nadu'd at 13.2% and Control at 9.0%. We'll talk more about Control a little bit coming up, but wow, Control, that high up, almost 10% of the meta.
Yeah, that's a little surprising. I mean, it kind of was picking up some steam on Magic Online in the coming weeks, and I mean, it definitely got some new tools from MH3, and you know, I think it's partly due to the fact that it's hard to like tune your control deck to an expected metagame until we're a couple weeks in, and we might be at that point.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, interesting to see, and there's a lot more to talk about with that coming in the rest of it, but definitely a lot of new tools in that deck. If you're not familiar with it, it's mostly energy stuff that it's picked up in a lot of ways. You know, we're talking about tune the conversation. We're talking about galvanic discharge. We're talking about Wrath of the Skies. We're talking about Flage in many of these as well, although some of them are blue-white control. All right, the next bracket down at NRG, I'm going to cut this off at decks that were above 4% of the meta. So that was a big bracket, 13.2%, 9.0%. Now we're down to 5.4% for Ruby Storm, 4.2% for Is It Murktide, and 4.2% for Domain Zoo. And those are all the decks that are above 4% in this tournament. Interesting to see Ruby Storm coming up and being the 3rd place deck at this point, even though it's a pretty large drop off between that and the top 2 decks. Definitely a hype deck online, though. All right, let's keep it moving. I think we all know what's in Ruby Storm, at least for now. Golgari Yawgmoth leads off the next tier, which is going to be below 4% and going all the way down to 3%. So there's a rather wide number of decks here. It's Golgari Yawgmoth, followed by Colorless Prison, and then Mono Green Tron, Merfolk, Living End, and Amulet Titan. All of those are between 3% and 3.6%. New decks here, really. Colorless Prison is kind of Eldrazi Tron, correct?
Yeah,
Everybody?
I think
Yeah.
it's like the prison list with Trinispheres and Chalices main.
Right. Okay. But it's still using Urza and all that and Labyrinth and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Urza.
Urzatron. Yeah, exactly. Mono Green Tron, I think we're all familiar with and kind of what that looks like now. Merfolk, of course, we've hyped it as being something that people are going to be looking at with Harbinger of the Seas as a big part of the package, and potentially Flare of Denial in some cases, and then Living End not really picking up a lot from the new set, and Amulet Titan also similarly not picking up a ton from the new set. But those are really the top half of the meta, and after that we kind of have it tagged as other. So other is 41.9% of the meta. So we're looking at about 60% of the meta at Energy was these kind of established archetypes or well-known archetypes. All right, so that's the meta. Let's go on. We can save our reactions for after we look at both metas, I think, really quickly, or as we talk about what could particularly be the Pro Tour meta. But let's talk about the top 8. So the top 8, Jonathan Zajac on Merfolk, Patrick Richardson on Bant Nadu, Johnny Brezit on Jeskai Wizards, Ryan Bellamy on Jeskai Energy Control, Matthew Holderness on Living End, Lucas Parson on Domain Zoo, Garrick Alford on Azorius Energy Control, and Drew Buchanan on Bant Nadu. So for those taking count, it's 2 Nadu, both Bant, 2 Control, 1 Jeskai, 1 Azorius,
3 Control.
A Living End, 3 Control.
Yeah, 2 Jeskai, 1
What's
to the
Sky
white.
Energy.
Well, 1 is Jeskai Wizards,
Oh,
though.
sure. Okay.
Right. So that's a slightly different deck list. It's a little control-ish, but I think it's got a little bit lower to the ground, if I remember right. It's playing Flame of Venor and a couple of other things to pay off on a Wizards package. But yeah, that's
MH3 All-Star Snapcaster Mage.
Hey, anything that can bring Snapcaster Mage back. I mean, I do wish that we could go into some of these cool decks Inc. on this particular episode, but I think we're going to be looking at larger metagame trends, unfortunately. But I do have my eyeball on Jeskai Wizards and seeing where that could go, because guess what? I got a lot of those cards. And then we got 1 Merfolk and 1 Zoo, I think I named already. So half of the top is Control and Bant Nadu, and then the rest of it is kind of one-offs. And the winner, Jonathan Z on Merfolk, which is cool to see. I mean, we kind of thought that there was a chance Merfolk would be a top deck coming into Modern Horizons 3.
One really quick tidbit on the list: Jonathan had 4 copies of Sink into Stupor and kind of a little bit of a lower land count, which I thought was pretty brilliant. Where you kind of want more blue cards to pitch to Subtlety and Force Negation, anyways, and just having that extra bounce spell seemed pretty good.
Yes, I do love that. And I got to say something that was fascinating to me. When I was looking around the list while I was on vacation last week, or as much as I could say I was on vacation last week, I was noticing lots and lots and lots of decks playing between 1 and 4 Sink and Stupors for the reason you're talking about, Devon, but many other reasons as well. So much so that a certain retailer that I tend to sell my cards to is buy listing copies of Sink into Stupor for over $4 a piece. So I think it's I think it's one of the cards in the set right now that is probably having supply problems, right? Because uncommons eventually will go down in price. Think Prismatic Ending and stuff like that and Dragon's Rage Channeler right after Modern Horizons 2 came out. But right now, people really want that card.
Wow, it's a good one.
So interesting stuff. And I think it's very cool that Merfolk won this one and maybe prove that it could stand up to both Control and the Nadu Menace. But let's see how things go from here. All right, MXP Tacoma, Washington. This was 216 players, so it was just a little bit larger than the Energy. I will say these tournaments have been going on for a little while. We haven't really talked about any of them on the show yet, and I think it's a great time to talk about them now. But it's nice to see another tournament series, and especially one on the West Coast, trying to do some things. Because I know that sometimes people out there feel a little underserved by the independent tournament series. So glad to see it happening. Let's talk about the overall meta. So guess what was at the top of this metagame? Nadu, 11.9%, and energy control at 10.3%.
Hey.
So, hey, sounds familiar. Here we are.
Third
again.
place, too. Looks like a familiar face.
Oh, yeah. And third place, too, as well. A little bit more than at the energy. It's, up a percentage point, but Ruby Storm was at 6.2%. Let's put a pin in what we think about the fact that repeated between the two tournaments, as I suspect it will inform some of our discussion later. So after we have our top 3 decks, Nadu, Energy Control, and Ruby Storm, we had 3 other decks that were above 3% of the meta, essentially. So we had Amulet Titan at 5.2%, Mardu Midrange at 3.6%, and Esper Gorios at 3.6%. Surprisingly, not that many decks above 3% of the meta. That means that almost 60% of this meta was less than was other. So were decks that made up less than 3% of the meta. Some of the lists that fell just beyond this cutoff because of the size of the tournament. So there were some decks with 5 or 6 copies, included Golgari Yawgmoth, Domain Zoo, Boros Burn, Mono Black Grief, Mono Black Coffers, and Is It Murktide. Also, Colorless Prison style and Mono Green Tron decks were way less popular here. Only 2 people were on Prison, 3 on less Prison-y style Eldrazi decks, and no one had Green Tron at all. Surprising.
Yeah, one thing that's notable about this is the Mardu midrange took up a pretty big chunk, and I think that's mostly, I'm looking at the list, the first list that I found from the MXP in the Melee event, and I think it's like the Mardu Scam, Guide of Souls, Grief Solitude, Ephemerate stuff, which I think took down a Moto challenge over the weekend, and seems that, that popularity is carrying over to paper.
Yeah, I mean, this deck also has Flage, right, in it, so it's kind of like a couple of those. And then it also has a Flipwalkers. It's got Ajani and Sorin both in it, which is pretty cool, definitely. I've had my eye on that list a little bit as well, but there are a lot of MH3 mythics in that deck, so I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to get to that one right now, friends. But yeah, it's really interesting. Here's the top 8. The top 8 for this tournament was Bant Nadu by Griffin Burschauer, Devon Straub with 4-color Nadu, Eric Hyun on Esper Gorios, Anthony Soon on Demir Death Shadow, let's go, Joseph Puglisi on Jeskai Energy Control, Jeffrey Hyun, related perhaps, on Boros Energy, Zachary Prindle on Eldrazi Tron, and Lamire on Colorless Prison. And look at that. There might have only been a few Eldrazi/Prison decks, but 2 of them made the top 8.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Any quick thoughts on the differences between these metas?
Pretty low Boros midrange representation, considering that felt like one of the most popular decks on Moto in the last week or so.
Overall, it's not here at all from what what these tournaments look like.
Made a top 8. Like, I'm sure there's a handful in each tournament, but still, like, that was not the new deck per se. Like, everyone went to Nadu, Storm, and Control.
I think that a lot of the Boros metagame share has kind of been taken over by Mardu, at least from a lot of the league. Like, a lot of what I've been seeing on Moto, it seems like a lot more people are playing Mardu because it still kind of has, it's not quite as energy focused as the Boros deck, but it has a lot of the same elements with Guide of Souls. But it has like the scam stuff with Grief, and I think that maybe some of the Boros players are kind of being maybe a little bit more drawn towards that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting how fast it's kind of moved
on
there. I will say when I was playing last week before I was traveling, it was like, I faced it 2 times in each league, the Boros version. And so it's like, okay, people really like this. Maybe it was just easy to assemble via Mana Traders for a little bit because the same reason I was playing Prowess in those decks was because there weren't many Modern Horizons 3 mythics in it. You just had to get Flage, right? So
yeah,
just gotta get Flage.
One quick note on these 2 Tron decks. One of them is kind of the more Emrakul-focused version with Card and Cookbook, and the other one is the more Prison one with the 4 Trinispheres, 4 Trinisphere, 4 Chalice. Actually, I don't see Chalice in this one, just Trinisphere. But yeah, so those are kind of the differences.
The Lamire one it's got 4 Chalice and 3 Trinisphere.
Yeah, the other one only has Trinisphere, no Chalice. But
oh, yep, you're right.
Interesting.
Yep. 1 Chalice in the side.
Yeah, for Karn, I think.
Yep, that makes sense. All right. So that's the lay of the land. Now let's talk a little bit about what we're really seeing with some of these things. So opening up to speculation from you two, opening it up to listeners to be upset about what we're about to say in this segment. I want to try to talk a little bit about some of the average match win points from the decks that we've seen. Maybe try to group them a little bit and see if this starts to look like a metagame for the Pro Tour. How's that sound?
Love it.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Let's talk quickly about this table that Shane was so nice to put together for us. So the top 5 decks in average match win points, over 12 on average from these tournaments. The number one we can talk about or not, but it was Dimir Death Shadow. 14 total player, or 4 players had it, and it had an average of 15.25 match win points. I think a lot of that was carried on the shoulders of Anthony Soon, who brought that to the top 8. However, I encourage you to look at this Dimir Death Shadows list. It is sweet, and maybe we can see if anybody likes it as a sleeper. But the other ones in this category, the other in this top 5 were Domain Zoo with 12.76 average, Merfolk with 12.6, Energy Control with 12.37, and Living End with 12. What do you all think about those 4 decks being theoretically the tier 1 going into this Pro Tour?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
You don't buy it? Okay.
I don't know if I buy it.
Here's what I think, for what it's worth.
Okay.
I think the tier 1 is going to be Nadu'd Energy Control.
Yeah.
And Living End. Mm-hmm. Maybe. Mm-hmm. That's what I think maybe will be the most registered decks at the Pro Tour. What do you guys think about that?
Here's my sleeper. I would add Domain Zoo to the list.
Okay.
I think Domain Zoo is it's been fairly consistent from what I've seen online playing with and against it. Or not with it, mostly against it, but also seeing some other people play it in my browsing of the internet. I've been really impressed with Domain Zoo. I think it got a couple new pieces, but I think people maybe have forgotten how strong having Cyano Draco out can be.
Yeah. I from what I saw, the zoo list that I was looking at really quickly really only had one new piece, and that was the Johnny Flipwalker.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Is that card more powerful than we thought it was going to be? Or is it
Yes.
just a fine piece? It
No,
is,
that
Devon?
card is really good.
Okay. Help us talk a little bit about why it's good. What is turning out to be good about it? Just making cats, or?
It's just the combination of a lot of different things where it makes 2 bodies. It's kind of hard to attack into because they can, if you don't have a removal spell for the Ajani, they can just, chump block with their cat, flip the Ajani pretty easily, even if they can't kill their own Ajani, their own cat token, which these versions do frequently. They play a pile of removal spells, discharge, sometimes the Mardu versions with Bowmasters, you could just go Bowmaster, ping my own cat token, flip Ajani. So you have that element. The flip is the back half is completely obscene. I didn't realize that the damage when you made a token went after any target, and it counts the number of creatures you have. So if you just have a bunch of tokens from an Ocelot Pride or something like that, you can just make a 2/1 and deal them 6 damage. Yeah, that card is crazy good.
You're just lava axing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just feels like a 2-mana win condition that's good at every stage of the game.
Yep.
From when I played it. You love it on turn 2, basically for the reasons Devon explained, and even late game, it's a sick draw just because if you're going to the late game, that 0 ability on the Walker side is just going to win you in a turn or 2.
Yeah.
My prediction for tier 1, I'm kind of with you guys. I think that I think Nadu is probably the top of the heap for me. I think that the deck is extremely resilient in terms of the amount of if you look at some of Canister's builds, he's been playing a lot of the Salt Dive version, and it's almost kind of this traditional combo trajectory is start building the deck with kind of all in on the combo and then see how much of the combo pieces we can shave for more fair cards. He's playing 4 Orcish Bowmasters now and a lot more interaction and things like that. So the deck is already kind of morphing into this mid-range plus combo shell, and that's where it gets really scary. So I think that Jeskai Energy, like I said earlier, now that we have a metagame that we want to build around, I think that could be something. And then I actually think that Ruby Storm is something I want to put in my top 3 as well.
Yeah.
Okay. For what it's worth, I have that at the top of my tier 2, but let's go back to Ruby Storm in a minute. I do want to talk about control for a minute more before we get off of it, just so people know really what's in this deck. We alluded to it a little bit earlier, but some of the stuff that I think is the most interesting about this deck, first off, just a reminder, 3 of them were in the top 8 across the 2 tournaments. There were 2 in NRG and 1 in MXP, which is pretty good. Nadu was the only one that had more. The energy package, I think the really interesting thing that it does that maybe I didn't realize is that I'm assuming that Wrath of the Skies has a really good matchup against Nadu. It's what's going on here.
Wrath of the Skies
because it gets rid of everything.
Card.
It's
that card
unreal,
is absurd.
But here's the biggest thing about it to me is that what maybe we didn't think about or didn't realize enough is like how good the incidental energy enablers were going to be. Tune the narrative, galvanic discharge, that kind of stuff that lets you build up a bunch of energy early or a bunch of extra energy that you don't actually use. If you use galvanic discharge to kill your opponent's Ragavan, you have 2 energy left over. If you then tune the conversation, I always want to call it a tune the ether. It's tune the conversation.
Tune the narrative.
Or tune the narrative. Tune the narrative. Yeah, sorry. Then you tune the narrative. Then you have 4 energy and you have a 2 mana wrath that sweeps everything less than 4 casting costs, creature, enchantment, or artifact. That's the thing that I think turned out to be a lot more broken than I thought it was going to be, was that there's a 2 mana wrath there now. And it works with like Snapcaster Mage. So you can Snapcaster Mage back a 2 mana wrath if you want to. That is priced to move as far as I'm concerned.
And the thing that's so messed up about it is a traditional tactic to employ against the control decks is just Urza Saga, right? And, especially with the printing of Lava Spur boots, the control decks can't really sit on their sweepers because the Saga player can just go end step token, untap token boots. Here's a lot of pressure. But Wrath of the Skies being able to, the fact that it kills the Saga means that even they can't, you cast the Wrath of the Skies under normal circumstances. If they sweep you can just say, okay, whatever, end step token, untap token, here you go. But now that just that plan is just completely out of the window now.
Interesting. Yeah, and then you have a good finisher in Flage. It has incidental life gain. It's a big body that you'll be able to probably escape if you have to, and you get to be able to use it as interaction. So I mean, I'm obviously more interested in the Jeskai decks. Jeskai Control was the first deck that I ever built when I got into Modern, when it was pretty bad, and I had Vendilion Click and Restoration Angel in it. But
still got Snapcasters?
It's definitely still have Snapcasters. Yeah, I've got them. I've got Innistrad ones. This deck is really intriguing to me and was surprising to me, and so I think that I want to talk a little bit about why it was looking good. And one of the main things that was interesting to me about this too, it's not really in the map on the Frank Karsten article that came out earlier this week, the Metagame Mentor article, where he talks about what the meta is. I looked through it. It didn't look like control was there, really. So it's interesting to see people picking it up much faster than we thought.
One card that really, really impressed me when I was watching Johnny Brissett, who was the person who top aided the NRG with Jeskai, was Tamiyo. And just the ability to what's so messed up about Tamiyo is Flame of Anor flips it instantly, so you can have these curves of Flame of Anor, flip my Tamiyo, plus, kill your creature, draw 2 cards, flip my Tamiyo, next turn rebuy the Flame of Anor, cast it again. It's Tamiyo is a really, really sick card.
Yeah, I think that we did a bad job on the Flipwalkers.
They were hard to evaluate.
They were.
Yeah.
Just to confirm, if Tamiyo is your only wizard, Flame of Anor has 2 modes because it sees it as a wizard when you're casting it, even if it ends up flipping on resolution of the draw 2 cards.
Right, because it wouldn't flip until you've resolved the spell fully.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I've opened 2 Tamiyos so far, and I'm excited about it because Tamiyo is also in that Dimir Shadow list, by the way, which I'm yes, let's do this. I guess I'm gonna get to find out why Tamiyo's good. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about Tamiyo in a minute. So, does anybody have anything to say about Living End? Living End feels like it's popping up here. I don't think there's anything different about it, but I think it might be hanging on. Maybe it's here too.
I think Living End might secretly maybe be in a fine spot. I don't know. It's Living End used to be really good against the creature combo decks because if they ever decided to go for a creature combo, you would just Violent Outburst. But I mean, now that you don't have that tactic anymore, it's like how good can your Nadu matchup be? I don't know. I'm not sold on it.
Good point. It seems to be doing well, but I also think that pros are disinclined to pick up Living End generally, so I don't feel like a lot of them play it very often, but that might just be my own bias right now. Okay, so why don't we talk about Storm for a minute then? So I personally, I love that Storm exists again. I felt like looking at these tournaments that people are starting to adjust here a little bit. For what it's worth, in the combined match win average, Ruby Storm was only getting 10.5 points per. So that placed it, at least on this listing, strictly by that number, it was around number 12 or 13 in that, which again, this is like a kind of difficult metric to use to evaluate things. But it also felt to me like it didn't place in the top 8. It was only in the top 16 at Energy. It didn't even make the top 16 at MXP. The highest one there was in 19th place. I just wonder if people have started to like meta around it already. But on the other hand, I do think that there are a bunch of practiced people who love Storm who still play on the Pro Tour. Like, wasn't John Finkel infamous for like goldfishing with the Storm deck that he just had in his house all the time?
Would you believe me if I told you I played against John on stream yesterday?
Did you really?
I did.
What's his
surprise?
screen
He was playing Storm.
Nailed it. What's his screen name?
Johnny Magic.
Johnny. Yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah. Listen, when I was writing these words, I was like, I could just see several players from that team pick up Storm. I felt like Finkel would definitely do it. Like, if it's good, I think they're going to try it.
Hey, Devon. Mm-hmm. Who won?
Me, obviously.
Oh, yeah. That makes you the greatest now.
Is that how that works?
You also took over his hedge fund as well, or his private equity fund, or whatever.
God,
whatever he does now.
My lawyers, his lawyers are going to come after me. Anyways.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think you're right. I think if there is a really, really good Storm deck, Finkel and their team are going to find it. And I'm pretty sure he is. Well, I mean, he's qualified because he's in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he's actually playing this weekend.
So the only reason I think he is playing was because I saw posts from, I forget who was sharing their like practice house outside of Amsterdam, and it was like "Welcome Finkel family" or something like that.
Oh, that was Nassif's
on the
post.
sign.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, Nassif's post. Yeah, that's right, Nassif's post. So I was kind of like, does this mean John's there? Which would be cool.
Yeah, if anybody's gonna break Storm, it's him. So I mean, and for a fact that he will have the best Storm list in the tournament.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so maybe we can agree that our top here is Nadu, Control, Zoo, Storm. Can we agree with that as a group among the four of us that we think those might be the top 4 meta decks?
That's where I'm at, yeah.
Yeah, and I still think there's a very high opportunity this early into the metagame that like one of these testing teams or testing houses like have cracked open something new or like uncovered a way to innovate on a former strategy that hasn't been popping up in MTG results. A, because they're not publishing results right now, and B, because you drop it 4-0 and you take that data to your team and like keep it secret until you can surprise people. At the PT in Chicago, Team CFB, they brought out vampires before anyone knew that Vein Ripper was good.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know, at some level, I feel like that's even more likely to happen in Modern, just like because of the size and power of the format and so many new cards that are just like waiting to be untapped.
So that's the big thing on this too, is that I think it's been remarkable how many cards from Modern Horizons 3 have gotten 5-0s as quickly as they have. I don't know if you remember this. I think I forget the name of the Twitter account, but if you search for around a little bit on the internet for like 126 or 135 cards from Modern Horizons 3 have already gotten 5-0s, and in that same amount of time it took like I think Modern Horizons 2 was like 100 cards and Modern Horizons 1 was only like 50 cards had gotten 5-0s. So these cards, even though it doesn't feel like they are completely dominating the meta, they are kind of dominating the meta and have led to a lot of new decks. So why don't we talk about the next tier from here? All right, here's what I'm going to propose is in the next tier down. We already talked about Living End. I think maybe we place Living End in tier 2. Merfolk, Mono Black Grief, and Tron and Colorless Prison. What do we think about that as being for the potential next tier down of things that will get registered?
I kind of like that. I mean, I don't want to lump them all together, but there's so many different of the Eldrazi, Temple, Ugin's Labyrinth decks. There's Mono Green Tron, there's the Prison Tron deck, there's a list that's been floating around online. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it's like Through the Breach Eldrazi, which is utilizing Emrakul the Aeon's Torn as its payoff for Ugin's Labyrinth, and then combining that with Through the Breach and all the Eldrazi stuff. So there's a lot of different Eldrazi stuff. I don't know if it's fair to lump them all together, but I think I would put that in that tier. Merfolk makes sense to me. Mono Black is such a weird one because I feel like I've tried so many different versions of Mono Black, and I don't know what it is, but I just can't quite get it right.
Yeah. Can I give you the average match wins for each of these ones real quick?
Yeah.
Merfolk, as we talked about a minute ago, 12.6. Living End was 12. Mono Black Grief, 11.8. Colorless Prison, 11.6. Mono Green Tron at 11. For the record, all of those are in the top half of decks that we've talked that as far as match win percentage goes, that would be the rest. All of those except for Tron are above Nadu in match win percentage, or points, not percentage. And Merfolk is above Energy Control. The other ones are all kind of in between Nadu and Energy Control. So it feels like, at least in these couple of tournaments, they're keeping up with the ones that we have in Tier 1.
Yeah, I think the other deck that I kind of want to put in this tier is the mid-range decks. This is, I think, a good spot for those to be, where whether it's Boros, whether it's Mardu, so I've seen some black-white lists, and it's like whether you want to be scam, whether you want to be more energy-focused and don't play the scam cards, but at the end of the day, they're still kind of all these, like, just this mid-range stuff. And I think mid-range, similarly to Control, it's a little bit easier to build once you know the targeted metagame, and you can figure out like what you want to tune those last couple of spots for, where you want your sideboard percentage points to be. And I also think that the Boros deck is just really, really good.
Just the Boros mid-range energy deck?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I kind of like... I've tried a couple different versions where you don't play the scam cards, and even, like, obviously the Boros decks don't play the scam stuff, but even in Mardu, just playing Mardu, which is basically just Boros with Bowmaster and Thoughtseize, but no scam cards, has also felt good to me.
I agree the Boros package is good. I think it was last week I was telling Shane how much I love the deck. I just feel like it's kind of a dog against Control. Like, Control really has to be whiffing for you to be able to, like, keep your creatures long enough to do a thing. And Wrath of the Skies in particular just feels like such a game breaker because it just wipes your board for no mana.
Yeah, I think Flage is kind of the key to that matchup, and making sure that you can, like, you know, keep trying to fuel the Flage with, you know, Fabled discards and fetch lands and things like that. But I guess to your point, they also have their own Flages, so you kind of get into this like weird staring competition where like they Wrath you Flage, they Flage, and it's like, you know, okay, we'll trade, then I Flage again, then you Flage again. It's like,
yeah, who's flaging who here?
Flage you, flage me, flage it together.
Turns out, Stan, that preview card, huh? That's a pretty good one.
You guys both had really good preview cards,
know,
turns
right?
out, as we talked about, Devon. Yeah.
That's us. Preview bros. Part of me is like...
They sub-previewed the dive down, Stan. They were like, let's give Stan a good one, let's give Devon a good one.
Yeah, I'm sure that was it.
Yeah.
Do I need to get my Flages before the PT? Because, you know, the PT has the power to move prices.
I mean, I kind of think the window's already passed, isn't it? Aren't they like $40 a piece now?
I think they're like 30
Yeah,
or 40.
but like... Couldn't they hit 80?
I don't know. I feel like that might be the top for that particular card, but we'll see. You're right.
And maybe, I'm just worried like Shieldred, but I guess that was in a standard product, and there weren't as many other good cards.
There's only one good card in that set, or two good cards in that set: Leyline Binding and that.
Liliana, right?
Okay.
Yeah. In another time, in another place.
Other worlds.
Okay.
But go for it. If you're gonna play him soon, go for it.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk sleepers in the last tier. This is sort of the sad tier a little bit. So one deck that we haven't talked about much, Esper Goryo's Vengeance, has been doing okay. 11 people brought it. I would put that in tier 3 just because I don't expect a lot of people to pick it up, but it's been doing well. These other decks have not been doing as well. Is it Murktide, Amulet Titan, Golgari Yawgmoth, Burn, and Prowess are all things that I have in my third tier, sadly, unfortunately. The only thing, I mean, there's lots to talk about with some of these decks have bigger changes than others. And I think that these are all okay decks, but I don't feel like these are ones that it feels to me like the pros are going to be compelled to pick up going into this Pro Tour, personally speaking. Thoughts?
Agreed. Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of the hate for Storm is coming in the form of graveyard hate, and that's like that kind of dual graveyard sideboard against the Goryo's deck makes me kind of a little bit hesitant about playing a deck like that.
Yeah, that's fair. One of the most interesting things I saw on this bracket of lists, like we talked about, people have seen the Prowess list that have the energy package instead. I think Everett's doing some interesting stuff where he's using a Prowess-like package to do like Underworld Breach plus Ruby Medallion. And so there's something going on with Raptor plus Discharge plus Amulet plus stuff to enable it that I don't know if someone's going to figure that out yet, other than Storm. I also think that one of the things that's most interesting, speaking of Tamiyo, is that most of the Murktide lists I saw were running for Tamiyo, and some of them, or many of them that I saw, are not running Ragavan anymore. They're just running Tamiyo, which I thought was pretty fascinating.
Ragavan
New Ragavan.
In with the old, or in with the new, out with the old, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Any last thoughts about the Pro Tour meta? Anything that we're forgetting about? I have one sleeper.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I'm like scanning through these deck lists trying to find a sleeper, and I think we've covered most of the stuff. I mean, we already talked about the black mid-range or scam necro decks, but even if we have them in a previous tier, I do kind of think somebody is gonna figure it out. Like if you play with the card Necro Dominance, you can realize like there's something here. This card is completely messed up, and there's got to be something somebody can do with it. I don't hate the mono blacklist that people are playing with, like, Soul Spikes and March of Wretched Sorrows, and I've seen some with Sickening Shoals and all these free spells. But it's just that card is way too powerful for it to not. There's got to be a deck with it.
I also feel like there's a chance, by the way, that Oops All Spells might be off everybody's radar, or Belcher is off of everybody's radar.
We're not
right
talking
now.
about those cards.
Yeah, and those lands have made a big difference. They're much more playable than people thought. I think many of the cards are even just better on their own. So going in a deck where they're doing something truly broken, I think could add up to something rather powerful. All right. Before we get out of here, one shot, what deck do you think is going to win the Pro Tour? Stan?
Oh, gosh. I feel like suddenly I'm under so much pressure.
Thank God you had to go first.
Deck is going to... Yeah.
I'll go first if you want.
Yeah, you go first.
Control.
You know what I was going to say?
What were you
I
going
don't
to say?
think Control will win, but I predict Control in the finals.
Ooh.
Control in the finals, losing to Storm or Tron. Or
Tron.
in Europe, I can see like some version of Tron running deep, beating Control in the finals.
Devon?
Well, first and foremost, I would like to say that the following message is not sponsored by my preview card, but I do think that Nadu'd is going to take down the tournament.
Nice.
There you go.
Nice.
All right, that's it for the Pro Tour Amsterdam preview and little MH3 Modern check-in. Next segment.
What's the deal with these new cards?
What have you been playing?
Before I get into that, can I pose a hypothetical question since Dave posed not a hypothetical, but an unexpected question? Have you guys seen anything in MH3 that helps warrant the banning of Violent Outburst? I've been thinking about this a lot lately.
do you mean?
Like, I don't see what.
Crashing Footfalls.
Okay, I've been thinking about Modern Horizons 3 and like there isn't anything here that I would worry about cascading into or supporting a cascade deck.
He just wants his rhinos back. I'm with him, honestly.
Is that what it said? I don't think it said that. I think that was the theory you came up with, that you believed there was something in MH3 that was going to be broken
Dave,
with Violent Outbursts.
This is how he goes to sleep at night, okay? We just got to let him have this one.
I know.
I'm just trying to think like who are we really? Is the format really better without Violent Outburst? I don't know.
Now that you mention it, I kind of wanted to try Rhinos with Flage, but I just haven't gotten around to it.
Brother, you and me, we're synced up today. We're synced up today.
That
I've
sounds
been
fun.
wondering if that was the answer all along. Is it really my turn to speak? Should I tell you about what I've been playing this week?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about a couple of decks, maybe 2 tree decks here right now. We'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, I wrote a little synopsis with the title, I Nadu'd, so you don't have to.
I love the title. I think it's going to turn out to be false. I think a lot of people are going to not do it anyway, but
Yeah, and maybe for good reason. Like,
This deck is
bottom line,
this deck is definitely not Nadu'd.
it's Nadu'd, not Nadu'd. It's strong and effective. Like, there's no two ways about it. The deck is actually quite good and resilient and can do a variety of powerful things. But it sucks to play.
Yes.
Really unfun to actually execute online. Maybe in paper it's a little easier to shortcut. Like, I know that it is. But it just reminded me of like the Heliod combo days of just click, 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 click. Gotta click all my clicks. Who's got time?
If you're playing
Who's got
Violent
time for
Outburst,
this?
you only have to click once.
That's what I'm saying.
you don't even have to find the other spell. It finds it for
That's
you.
true.
That's also true.
Yeah. So is this deck like is this Heliod? Is that what this deck kind of is?
It's a
Do we
lot
think,
better
or what
than
do you think?
Heliod.
I mean, better than,
Right.
but is it? I mean, I guess it could be kind of that.
In a way, like if you consider Heliod an all-in creature combo strategy based on like the synergy between 2-ish cards that are enabled by a whole bunch of other cards that can be fetched for with all of your other like really valuable pieces, then yes, this is another way to do Heliod. But like maybe it's just another way to do every other creature combo deck again, where you just like you get your pieces on the board and then you just click to victory, and your opponent, if they don't have instant speed removal up or the mana for it, then they're just kind of screwed.
So Yawgmoth.
I guess, yeah. But maybe Yawgmoth should be playing the Black Force from MH1.
I'll tell you what is playing the Black Force from MH1. Those mono black necro decks that Devon was talking about earlier. I've seen them carrying a couple of them.
Yeah.
But anyway, Stan, I mean, we talked about this deck, like the mechanics of this deck a couple weeks ago. Is there anything you wanted to throw in about like the way it's put together or that kind of stuff? Or are you just here to tell us if you want to have fun, maybe this isn't the way to go?
So here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say while playing with the deck. Like, fortunately, I think a lot of people have the courtesy to scoop to you once you start going off. And the thing that I was really impressed with while playing with the deck is that you have a lot of different ways to go off depending on what your opponents are trying to do to interact with you. Having your Shukos basically cut off by an opposing Chalice on one, not the end of the world. Because you can still get them with an Urza Saga, or if you can't get them with an Urza Saga, you have other pieces to like go off on the combo without Shuko. And the deck, even though it isn't all in combo deck, the more you play with it, the more you find other like weird things you could do to actually win the game without like doing the Nadu'd combo, which I think is probably what makes it so powerful, really, is that you have this plan A that can go off, I think, as early as turn 2 with like the nuttiest nut draw, but turn 3 a little bit more realistically. But if like your opponent knows what's up and they're like endurancing you to shut down your Thassa's Oracle, or they're like playing a bunch of removal spells so that you never have a Nadu on the board or whatever it is, you can like still do really cool stuff with Springheart Nantuko. And in a way, like at the end of the day, it was Springheart Nantuko and the bestow ability that like really impressed me with this deck. As just like, oh, we're doing more than one powerful thing. We found that there's this whole other MH3 card that's just like makes it really cheap and efficient to just like flood the board with copies of whatever you want to copy. And that's kind of what blew me away.
Did you play the version with Bowmaster? Because one thing that I came across was you can bestow onto your Bowmaster, and that, let me tell you, that gets out of hand.
Wait, why does that get out of hand?
Because you just make copies of Bowmaster.
Oh, that's right. You make copies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
You make copies. I did not play Bowmaster. I played straight Bant. But I did have a game where I ran out a Skyclave apparition and bestowed that, and then just like every turn, sometimes multiple times per turn, I was just copying Skyclave apparitions, and my opponent just could never keep a permanent down. That was fun.
For who?
For science. So yeah, deck is consistent, deck is powerful, deck is flexible. I think what's really interesting about, Nadu'd as a card, and Spring Heart Nantuko as like a support card, and Shaku is that Shuko?
Shuko.
Those
And
three cards.
Nantuko, by the way.
Yeah.
Not, yeah.
Whatever. Those three cards actually only represent two colors. We're just talking about blue and green, and that you can support those with just like your spell package, which is Summoner's Pact, Court of Calling, Eldritch Evolution. You can build the deck in so many different ways that this really powerful core can almost be slotted into like a million other things.
I mean, literally, I saw somebody with Nadu'd Titan amulet.
Oh, yeah.
Saying that they got a 5-0. And I was like, that is fascinating. There's only 2 Titans in it, but there's all this other stuff in there that I guess just makes it go, go, go. And it just fits in the deck. It even had space for 4 rings still.
Saw Nadu'd hammer.
If it sits, it fits.
Saw Nadu'd hammer the other day.
Love it.
So
Actually, I don't love it. I'm very curious. I'm very worried about it, but let's see where it goes.
don't be scared, David. You'll be fine. Deck is good. Deck takes too long to play. Like I think that's kind of the biggest weakness. It takes a long time to play, and you kind of have to weasel yourself out of like awkward situations because opponents are getting wise to it. And you have to know how to play a toolbox strategy deck in order to like get like a little bit of incremental value, so that maybe you can punish your opponent for trying to tax or interact your game 1 plan, and find like other ways to maximize your really powerful fetching abilities to like do some, either Spring Heart Nantuku business, or like just an Urza Saga plan with your lands. And even if you're going that plan B route, though, it's still going to take forever. And I think this deck is slow. And assuming that it doesn't run as slowly in paper, I'm actually not sure. But assuming it's like fast in paper, I can see it being okay. But if it's just as slow in paper as it is online, and we find ourselves in like an egg situation, I think like that might be a long-term problem for people's like patience and tolerance of the play experience.
Yeah. Personally, commentating on a couple of Nadu'd matches over the weekend on the Energy, because I was doing coverage on Saturday. It does translate to paper the exact way that you described. It takes basically forever, and it was like watching. It's hard to describe, like watching paint dry, kind of.
And imagine like this versus Storm. We're probably going to get something like that at the P2. Nadu'd versus Storm, where it's just like 2 people playing solitaire against one another, and like it's almost like sitting in a commander pod where you have to like do nothing for 10 minutes while you wait for your opponents to like play all their little commander spells.
So you mean playing against you in Commander?
And it's like, I ping you for 1, I gain a life, draw a card, ping you for 1.
Stan does not pay the 1.
No, he's not pay the 1. I think if you believe the ban announcement that came out on Monday, Wizards expects there to be a lot of Storm versus Nadu'd matchups at the Pro Tour, because they specifically said Storm was one of the best pieces of counterplay against Nadu'd, which I thought was interesting. And yeah, wow, that's going to be fun for the Pro Tour.
And
a lot of interesting top decks.
Speaking of that, correct me if I'm wrong. I think they called out Nadu'd directly as something they were keeping an eye on.
Yeah, they said that they believed that people were already starting to adapt to it, including by playing more Ruby Storm than blah, 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 was basically what they said.
The way to beat a turn 3 deck is beat a turn 2 deck.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to Legacy, friend. Here we are.
Took us long enough.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed with Nadu'd, and maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but the combo can actually fizzle. even if you've got your spring leaf, spring heart, man, I gotta remember the name of this card. The Nantuko. We're just gonna call it the Nantuko. Even if you have the Nantuko out and a Shuku,
Your Nan.
yeah, and Nadu, and you have like those three things, like there's a scenario where you run out of things to trigger the Nadu ability because you're not drawing into enough lands off the Nadu. And like maybe you run into this patch where you have like 6 to 10 non-land cards on the top of your library in a row. You need to produce lands in order to get the plant tokens or whatever the Nantuku creates. And if you're not producing enough lands, then you kind of just have to like untap and hope you can do it the next turn, which you probably can, but even so, there is some risk and like some percentage of a fail state.
Yeah, I don't exactly know what the numbers look like, but like obviously I think it depends on how much stuff you have in play, because that's all that really matters is like how many random bodies can you put into play to put a Shuko on to trigger the thing twice. I think we saw it on camera. I saw it on camera a couple of times. I think I don't know if it fizzled once. Maybe it did, but it was like they tapped out for the combo with 2 creatures in place. It was like, I think in spots like that, you're pretty not favored to hit. But if you have like a mana left over and 3 or 4 creatures in play, I think it's not 100%, but it's got to be pretty damn close.
That experience though made me kind of respect a version. Maybe you guys talked about last week or some previous episode that had a bunch of the 0 drops, like Ornithopters and Mennonites.
Mm-hmm.
Like that kind of actually makes sense to me because even if you're not getting lands out, at least you're drawing into no mana creatures that you can generate some more Nadu Shuku triggers off of.
Yeah, there was actually, so I talked about, there was a Nadu Hammer deck that I saw that was doing something similar where it was playing Ornithopters and Memnites, and I also saw Nadu Affinity, which that was actually a deck that we featured on camera on Saturday at the NRG that looked pretty cool. It was like exactly what you said, just, when you're drawing into those zeros, having more, like every 0 you draw is just another draw 2, which kind of like, it lowers the fizzle rate for sure.
Are we going to get a Stony Silence uplift? Is Stony Silence the hero we need? No, because there's plan Bs. Like Shuko is it's the best tool, but it's not the only tool.
Yeah, if you were gonna want to go to something like that, I mean we've already seen a lot of it, but Disruptor Flute, because like Flute can name the Shuko, but if they don't have a Nadu in play, you can either maybe name Court of Calling or Nadu if you want to. There's some like a little bit of play to it there.
Yeah. Long story short, deck is strong, deck is powerful, it's consistent, it's really well built, and you can put this package into a lot of different other strategies. I think it's something to keep an eye on, and I think if you're thinking about what to play during Modern RCQ season, which kicks off in August, like you could do worse than this deck, but like this is a deck you really will want to goldfish a lot just to like find the lines and like the different paths to victory, because you're counting on Court of Calling effects to draw into pieces for redundancy. And yeah, if you're sitting against it, like start learning how to focus on your breathing and meditating, because you might be sitting there for a few minutes unless you concede because you feel that they're doing something deterministic.
If your opponent is going off with Nadu, call a judge and ask if you're allowed to play Subway Surfers on your phone while they're comboing.
Subway Surfers. All right, Devon.
Dave.
We're moving away from tournament top level decks right now.
Hey, come on! Why are you gonna be like that?
I mean, I'm just saying it's not established yet. That's all. Let's have some more fun.
Well, let's make it
instead. So you have a cool deck that you've been enjoying.
I do. So I have a very, very unhealthy obsession with this little turtle card called Kappa Cannoneer, which we had discussed a couple of times in a few spoiler episodes, and one that was spoiled pretty early on. It was like that first early batch of spoilers when they did the first article. And, I've experienced doing some experimenting, a lot of different affinity shells, and believe it or not, I think I may have cracked the case. So this particular deck that I've been jamming with and doing some iterations on, It's actually an Asmo deck as well as an Affinity deck. So Kappa Cannoneer is, at its core, a card that is extremely powerful, but you need to have a lot of cheap enablers and a lot of ways to generate more artifacts and more game objects. And one of the better ways to do that happens to be the Underworld Cookbook, which not only is an artifact itself, but it's also, when combined with stuff like Oval Chase Daredevil, allows you to just generate a ton of artifacts pretty quickly. One other thing that is nice about this is a card that kind of really tied the room together, which was Blood Fountain, which is a card from one of the Innistrad sets. I think it's Crimson Vow. And it's a black artifact. Says when it enters the battlefield, you make a blood token, which is an artifact, and you can pay 4, tap, sack it to return up to 2 creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. So you have this kind of, you see where you have this base of cookbooks, blood fountains. Both of those make multiple artifacts. You have Mishra's Bauble as well, 0-mana artifact. So you have a ton of ways to put artifacts into play cheaply early. You pair that with both Kappa Cannoneer and Thought Monitor, so that's kind of like your affinity payoffs. And then the rest of the deck from there is kind of like Emery to pair with Mishra's Bauble, a little bit of interaction with Metallic Rebuke, a couple of Mox Ambers, a small Saga package. You have a Lava Spur Boots and a Shadow Spear, and then the mana base 21 lands, which includes 4 Sagas.
Can I tell you, by the way, I have an Assassin's Creed card for you for this deck.
Oh.
That maybe you've seen already.
No, I actually haven't.
But we can talk about it maybe later. But it's one of the ones that I saw from watching Spice stream. It's called Bazim Ibn Ishaq, and it is a creature. We'll talk about it later.
We'll have to check it out. Maybe I'll playing some Bobbin Ishaqs later on.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the concept of the deck. Like at its core, it's, you're an affinity deck. You're trying to cast Kappa Cannoneer and Thought Monitor as quickly as possible. But one of the kind of biggest traditional issues with traditional affinity is most of the time you don't have a lot of interaction, right? Most affinity decks are mono blue. Sometimes maybe they like sneak in Dismember or something like that. Metallic Rebuke is maybe not the best card in the world, but as far as fighting over creatures in the battlefield, there's nothing better than Asmo. Like if you just have an Asmo and they can't answer it, they're never going to be able to untap with a single creature. And I think that's part of what makes this deck so much better than the other affinity shells I played. Is the other like mono blue affinity decks, the thing about affinity is even if you can Kappa on turn 3, that's usually not going to be fast enough to race these combo decks like Storm and Nadu. And Asmo happens to be fine against both of those decks because, you can kill Nadu with it, you can kill a Ral with it. Sure, you can't kill a Ruby Medallion, but, you get what you can take. So that's kind of something that I like about that. Another cool thing about Blood Fountain, it's not only an enabler for Kappa, like 2 artifacts for Kappa, also 2 artifacts for Emery, so it kind of lets you cast a relatively discounted Emery. It also happens to be a discard outlet for Asmo, because it makes a blood token discards, discard for Asmo. So that's kind of nice. There's a really cool interaction, doesn't come up a ton, but if you have Asmo, Emery, and Thought Monitor on the battlefield, and some food generation with Cookbook, you can have the Asmo fight the Thought Monitor, and then Emery back the Thought Monitor to kind of like set this loop up before you just draw a bunch of cards. So you can do stuff with that. Another cool thing is like Emery being mill, like self-mill. You mill over a couple of cards, you get those back with Blood Fountain. So there's a lot of cool stuff there. As far as the matchups are concerned, I think that, like I said, this deck has a little bit more interaction than previous affinity decks, so I think it's maybe competitive against the combo decks. Metallic Rebuke helps against the Rupee Medallions because you mentioned you have the Asmos to fight the creatures. But yeah, I don't know. I've been liking this deck a lot. I think there's definitely something here. And yeah, there's one last thing I want to mention about Lava Spur Boots, and I feel like we maybe discussed this a little bit previously when OTJ came out. But Lava Spur Boots is really, really good in these Saga decks. Like it is ridiculous how much it changes the math. Normally when you're facing down an Urza Saga, it's like they can end step make a token, they go untap, make a token, get Shadow Spear, and it's like, well, that sucks. They're getting one big hit in with this
Getting
this
land
one
or
construct.
getting life.
Right, exactly. They're gaining a little bit of life. And instead of you taking like 5 or 6 damage and then gaining 6, you're just taking 14 damage. And it's insane how much Lava Spur Boots really changes the math on, like, it just goes from a 3-turn clock to a 1-turn clock effectively, and it really makes you play in a very, very different way.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because I think most people are just kind of like, good card and hammer, be able to haste your guy out. If you need to search up something with Saga or whatever that's doing something different, that's great. But yeah, it's fascinating to see that it's just kind of completely makes those Saga tokens hit even harder.
Yeah, and what's nice about boots too is, like, if you fetch the boots early and then later on you either draw or cast from the graveyard a Kappa Cannoneer, you can just haste your Kappa Cannoneer.
Yeah.
And the one other interesting thing is, like, so the cookbook and Blood Fountain very good at enabling Kappa faster, but also you get into these spots where you have like a Kappa Cannoneer and 2 cookbooks, and you just get to make the Kappa bigger every single turn because cookbook just makes it bigger for free basically. So yeah, this is I think by far the best Kappa Cannoneer deck that I've played so far, and one that I want to spend quite a bit more time on, because I think that there's not enough people playing Kappa Cannoneer. The card is extremely messed up, and I hope that I can do some more work on this one.
That's awesome. This is a very fun looking deck to me.
It's not a Dave deck though. Come on.
I mean, I like Affinity S. I just don't like Asmo.
Yeah.
Very much. Or I've never had a lot of luck with Asmo Emery type shenanigans. And so, but I don't know. Kappa's cool. It's a cool looking deck. I'll play what I want, Devon. And this week, what I played. Can we talk about it for 5 minutes?
I'm down.
Please.
Because we actually literally just got someone in the Discord, Jay, who said, has anyone played the Energy package in Prowess? Tagged me in the chat and then said, wondering how it plays compared to pre-MH3 list, or maybe this is possibly discussion for this week's episode. Guess what, Jay?
As a matter of fact,
we're answering your request in real time.
Wow.
Devon,
mm-hmm.
You took this out to F&M the other night.
Oh, yeah.
I played it in a league. Lots of people have been trying this. So I can find a list really quickly, but I think most people can kind of imagine what this is. And it is Prowess. It's Prowess in the sense that it still has Slick Shot and it has our good friend Monastery Swiftspear in it. But other than that, it's kind of adapted into being much more of a, I don't want to say, I mean, it's still fast, but it's got the whole energy package in it that actually makes it a bit more resilient and has a bit less air in it than I think it used to. What do you think about that assessment, Devon?
That does make a lot of sense. For reference, I did put a list in the show notes if you can't find it. Okay, there you go. You found it.
Oh,
so
thank you.
We're good. Yeah, it's really interesting where a lot of the list before had, the card that has been cut from the list that I really haven't seen that I've really been missing is Soulscar Mage, and I think that's kind of one of these like sacred cow things where you see a Prowess deck without Soulscar Mage. What are you, an idiot? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just don't know that you really need it anymore. You have like this much higher threat density with Amp Raptor and Slick Shot Show Up and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've played a number of Prowess lists over the last couple of years where it was like, well, how prowessy do we need to be good, and how many good cards do we want to play over Soulscar Mage, which has always just been kind of like hanging on a little bit. Like, I've certainly defended Soulscar Mage on the show before, but I've also played lists before that were just Monastery Swiftspear, Dragon's Rage Channeler, and Ragavan, and we're still playing kind of a prowessy game, sort of. And it's more of like a mid-rangey burn kind of thing going on. This list right now is 4 Amped Raptor, 4 Dragon's Rage Channeler, 4 Monastery Swiftspear, 4 Slick Shot Show-Offs, and then a card that I didn't play in the list that I tried, but I wish I had played, and that's Questing Druid.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Galvanic Discharge, Lava Dart, Lightning Bolt, Mutagenic Growth. 4 Mutagenic Growth, Devon. We're living the dream. I haven't been trying 4 in a while, but here it is.
That's kind of where I wanted to have a discussion about that, because Amped Raptor into Mutagenic growth, every time that happens, because like it's weird because you want to cast the Raptor on turn 2 because you want to live the dream of casting your your 2-drop, or you want to cast Amped Raptor into any one of the other creatures in the deck, and that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But like you have these kind of awkward hits where you have discharge. Okay, fine, you still get a little bit of energy, but it's not what you'd prefer. And then Mutagenic growth, which if your 1-drop died or you don't have a 1-drop, then Mutagenic growth just does nothing on that board. So like it's a good card, and I think it does make a lot of sense given the fact that so many people are playing red base removal right now. To discharge gets 3 energy. If they go to discharge your show off, you can growth it. You get the 4 toughness. Same thing with lightning bolt. So I think the card has a lot of utility against the red removal, but it's like it is such an awkward hit off Raptor.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible. It's basically just Raptor just gives you 2 energy. But the thing that saves you from feeling like that's so bad, I think, is, what you said, number 1, is that you have to save Slick Shot Show Off. But having the extra energy from Unstable Amulet is fine. Not from Unstable Amulet, for Unstable Amulet. So you can draw more than 1 card off of it. And I agree with, this was one of the main cards coming out of the first couple of weeks of people playing MH3 that I wanted to try. Unstable Amulet is sweet. And I think that it gives a whole new dimension to this deck in particular that it didn't have before, where, you don't have that much energy generation in here, but it does feel like you have enough that you get to draw 1 or 2 cards off of your amulet. You get to ping people with the cards that you're casting off of the amulet, and you can do some truly wild stuff if you get multiple amulets with this deck by doing things like... So you don't have Underworld Breach in here. I played with Underworld Breach in the deck that I was playing. You do have Seek the Beast, and also Lava Dart is the card that actually did a ton of work for me when Unstable Amulet was on the board. In fact, one game I killed somebody from 12 with like 3 lands out because I had played 2 Unstable Amulets, and then one of the amulets revealed a Lava Dart. I had 2 Lava Darts in my graveyard. And so I cast the second amulet and then did 12 damage to them because, with no mana, because it was like they each just became lightning bolts that had flashback, which is crazy, crazy.
Yeah, a lot of people may not realize that, but amulet is not conditional of you casting the spell from the amulet. It's whenever you play a spell from anywhere other than your hand. So graveyard, outside of the game. I believe it works with Wish to sideboard it, but that doesn't matter for here. But anyways, it counts off of Amped Raptor too. And what's really you kind of exactly said it, where if it wasn't for Unstable Amulet, I think the rest of these energy cards would be like if Amulet was just, say, like more copies of Questing Druid or something, I don't think you would choose to play Amped Raptor and Discharge as your only energy payoffs. I think you're kind of playing those as ways to facilitate Amulet because of how good that card is.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, going Amped Raptor into Unstable Amulet is amazing.
Oh yeah.
What a start to a game that is. There's a lot here. I still think that this is a Slick Shot Show Off deck, though, realistically, when you're looking at it all. And that's the thing that did, my what I just talked about with Lava Dart aside, it's kind of like a Slick Shot Show Off deck first and then an Unstable Amulet deck second. And it's really nice to have a not all in kind of win condition that helps a little bit, like Amulet, to maybe offset some of the all inness of Show Off. And so I think that, I guess if I was going to sum up how this deck plays different than it before and after Modern Horizons 3, I think it's a bit more lower variance deck now, in a sense. It's got more better cards, higher card quality. It's got a better removal suite in it. I think it has space to do these things that it wasn't able to do before. I do think you've lost a little bit off the top end with the deck. All of this being said, I didn't feel like it was particularly a definite top tier 1 deck to me right now. And I especially struggled with Boros Energy when I was playing, where I struggled against Flage.
Yeah.
Basically, where that felt really tough.
And also removals 1 mana and tags all of your creatures.
Basically, every game I lost was the Flage.
Yeah. Yeah. So removal is fine, is one thing, and like I'm pretty used to playing against that. And like Devon said, mutagenic growth is great to have around right now because of all the red base removal that there is. How much galvanic discharge there is around complicates that things a little bit. That because people save up energy to be able to do and get out of mutagenic growth range, and so you got to watch it. But that's always been a prowess problem. Flage, the problem is it is a low downside way to run life gain in the deck, and so you have the burn problem, basically where like if they start gaining even 6 life. It adds so much more to what you're trying to do in the deck that you're not really making it happen.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for that incidental life gain, the chip damage from one or even multiple amulets in play you wouldn't even care. Like that's why this deck is so good against just traditional mid-range decks that have a pile of removal but not Flage at the top end. It's like they can interact with all of your threats. It's not easy for them to interact with an amulet on the battlefield, and once that amulet finds another amulet, they're just going to die. Like it's just they're going to die because they can't really stabilize and stuff. And it just deals so much damage, but the life gain is kind of tough. I kind of want to explore a version of this that plays static prison, like instead of splashing green, splash white for prison as sort of a clean answer to Flage, and that's kind of where I want to go next.
Yeah, back towards the beginning of Modern Horizons 2, I played kind of a deck, a prowessy deck that was red-white that had prismatic ending in it. That was actually pretty similar idea, right? And I think Static Prison might be even better for that purpose than prismatic is at this point in time. I also think that the deck that I saw Everett streaming with the other day, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, where he was playing this energy package, playing Dragon's Rage Channeler, not playing Slick Shot Show Off, I believe still playing Monastery Swift Spear, but it was like an energy mid-range deck where he had Ruby Medallion in, and he had Questing Druid, and it was a less all-in version of something that was prowess-y.
So like probably no Lava Darts then?
So this deck from Aspiring Spike, so it's playing DRC, Amped Raptor, 4 Questing Druid, and 4 Ragavan. So I misspoke. It's no Monastery Swift Spear. It's got Galvanic Discharge, Lightning Bolt, Manamorphose, and then the artifacts are Ruby Medallion, Mishra's Bauble, Unstable Amulet, and Underworld Breach is in this deck as well. So it's more of a breach version of the deck that is not trying to prowess people, but can kind of still play a mid-range kind of fair game, get some advantage off of Ragavan, kill people with Dragon's Rage Channeler, but also can kind of go off with Underworld Breach plus Unstable Amulet, thanks to Mishra's Bauble and Dragon's Rage Channeler, thanks to Manamorphose plus Ruby Medallion plus Breach. So there's a bunch of different things going on here where it's sort of like a mid-storm deck with a creature package in it as well that I think is kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, this looks cool. It's kind of like Storm without the Storm cards.
Yeah. So for me, the bottom line is kind of like, I feel like there's a core that's around prowess cards that I like to play that has Amped Raptor, Galvanic Discharge, and Amulet in it as well. I'm not quite sure where it's going yet. None of these quite feel like they've been solved enough where they rise up to the tier, and I worry when Control is played as much, if getting swept by Wrath of the Skies and stuff like that, it's just going to make it really difficult for you to do stuff. But I don't know. I thought that it was still fun. I thought it was as powerful as before MH3. I just feel like it might be slightly less good in the meta than it was the last 6 weeks or so.
Yeah,
what
like you said,
Devon?
Especially with the rise of Control. Like if I'm playing a deck like this that has a bunch of 1-mana creatures and things like that, I can't imagine facing down the combination of like a bunch of spot removal plus Wrath plus Flage. Like how are you ever supposed to beat a deck with those cards in it?
Yeah. Yep. All right. I think we should call it here. We could come back to Assassin's Creed another time, right?
What was that? Can we talk about that one card that you were going to mention real quick?
Yeah.
Basim?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, yes. So this is Basim Ibn Ishaq. It is a blue and a black for a legendary creature, human assassin. Whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card. Basim Ibn Ishaq can't be blocked this turn. This ability triggers only once each turn. And then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, it gets a +1/+1 counter on it. So I wasn't, when I saw Everett talking about this, and then when I was looking at it myself, I was not thinking about it in a deck like what you had, but it does feel like there's an awful lot of artifacts in your deck that, and you'll be, casting some legendaries and other things as well. You don't get anything for putting Urza's Saga into play, so that doesn't count as a trigger for this, which is one of the reasons that I was thinking about it for a little bit and then set it aside. But I just think this is an interesting card, especially with Mox Amber and Mishra's Bauble, and Cookbook kind of adds to the fun. So it seemed like this could be an interesting secondary threat for the deck that you were talking about, and it draws you cards.
Yeah, honestly, Emery too. Like that core of, and this being a legend for Amber itself. So you have like this, Asmo, Emery, Tameo. That's like a really good 16 core of legends, plus the Ambers, the Baubles, the Cookbooks. There's a lot of ways to trigger this. Seems kind of cool, honestly. Like 2 mana, 2/2. The next turn you play a Bauble for free, draw a card, attack them, put a counter on it. It's kind of cool. I think this has some interesting applications. This is the first time I'm reading this card, and you're getting my live reaction. I like it. It's a cool one.
Mm-hmm. This is one of the most interesting cards in the set, I think, and we will save the other 4 or 5 that I had drawn out, including Propaganda, my friends. Propaganda is in the set. Not like we're playing that in Modern, but
we'll save the Propaganda talk for next week.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe the week after.
Yeah. Who knows?
We're recovering from the Pro Tour. Who knows? Who knows how this is going to work?
We did it. Is anyone going to the Pro Tour? Anyone you know?
Not that I'm aware
Is Shane
of.
at the Pro Tour? Is that why he's not here today?
Suspicious.
That's why he's not here.
Suspicious vacation from Shane.
Yeah. Who took that photo that Gabe Nassif posted on his Twitter account?
We're going to need some receipts, Shane.
Yeah,
he handles all of our business expenses, unfortunately, so we would have no idea if he was robbing us blind with the receipts.
All right, we should investigate that, and to do so, let's wrap up this week's show. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. And if you use Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and a review. Also, we love the reviews on Spotify. Talk about how much you like our show on there, too.
I will say, since you mentioned this, I'm going to pop in real quick. There is someone who we mentioned that got like top 4 in a tournament recently who wrote in on Spotify and said, I've always wanted to be mentioned by name, and you did not mention my name when you said the deck list. So Nicholas 2, we're mentioning you on the podcast. I hope it makes your day or potentially your hour or minute.
Yeah, I hope Nicholas is still listening to this part of the episode.
Probably not.
It's usually when people log off. If you'd like to submit a question to our podcast, you can reach out on Twitter at The Dive Down or email thedivedown@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/thedivedown, or check out our store at thedivedown.com/store. Or you can also check out Devon, aka Doomwake's Twitch channel. Did you know if you have Amazon Prime and a Twitch account, you can just gift 1 sub to someone for free using your Amazon Prime account? You're paying, it's money in the ecosystem. That's all I'm saying.
How did
You're
you know
paying
that,
for this
Stan?
thing that you could do for Devon? Because I've been doing it forever, but I've just been like handing out my Prime subs to like Spike and other streamers. And honestly, I haven't logged into Twitch in over a year, since before you joined the Dive Down. So it was like, as soon as I finally got back into my Twitch account, I was like, I know I got something for Devon that he's going to want.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
A little bit of my Bezos bucks.
Bezos.
All right, so send Devon your Bezos bucks, or head over to Heavy Play to get some incredible deck and dice boxes and playmats featuring the Equip Mag system. If you use promo code TheDiveDown2024, you'll get 10% off your first order at Heavy Play. And shout out to Mana Traders for sponsoring the Dive Down. If you sign up for Mana Traders using promo code TheDiveDown_43A, it'll get you 10% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. And look, save some money on MH3 paper cards too with our friends at Nerd Rage Gaming. Use promo code DIVE8 for 8% off your order at NRG. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, get out there and good luck at the Pro Tour. David literally just Googled aspiring spike YouTube. Shane,
Yeah, I don't know.
So we're buying that kind of time right now.
Let me find the list.
Shane, David just typed into ChatGPT, what's aspiring spike's name again?
Who is aspiring spike? It's a video. Thanks, buddy.
Shane, David is watching PayPal commercials, and
That wasn't a pay. Oh yeah, you guys are looking at my screen. How dare you?